Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajjana Ranjana. Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajjana Ranjana. Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. We are reading from Canto 7, Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is entitled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons. Today we are on text 15. केचित् खनित्रैर्बिभिदु केचित् खनित्रैर्बिभिदु सेतु प्राकार गोपुरान् सेतु प्राकार गोपुरान् आजीव्यांश्चिचिदुर्वृक्षान् आजीव्यांश्चिचिदुर्वृक्षान् केचित् परशुपानयः केचित् परशुपानयः प्रादहान् शरण्यायिके प्रादहान् शरण्यायिके प्रजावान् ज्वलितो मुखे प्रजानां ज्वलितो मुखे केचित् खनित्रैर्बिभिदु सेतु प्राकार गोपुरान् आजीव्यांश्चिचिदुर्वृक्षान् केचित् परशुपानयः प्रादहान् शरण्यायिके प्रजानां ज्वलितो मुखे केचित् खनित्रैर्बिभिदु सेतु प्राकार गोपुरान् आजीव्यांश्चिचिदुर्वृक्षान् केचित् परशुपानयः प्रादहान् शरण्यायिके प्रजानां ज्वलितो मुखे केचित् खनित्रैर्बिभिदु सेतु प्रकार गोपुरान् आजीव्यांश्चिचिदुर्वृक्षान् परशुपानयः प्रादहान् शरण्यायिके प्रजानां ज्वलितो मुखे केचित् खनित्रैर्बिभिदु सेतु पानयः शरण्यायिके प्रजानां ज्वलितो मुखे वैष्णवीस् केचित् प्रणीतैर्बिभिदु सेतु प्राकार गोपुरान् आजीव्यांश्चिचिदुर्वृक्षान् केचित् परशुपानयः प्रादहान् शरण्यायिके प्रजानां ज्वलितो मुखे केचित् प्रजानां ज्वलितो मुखे केचित् खनित्रैर्विबिदु सेतु प्राकारगोपुरान् अजीव्यांश्चिचिदुर्वृक्षान् केचित् परशुपानः प्रादहान् शरण्यायके प्रजानां ज्वलितो मुखे केचित् खनित्रैर्विबिदु सेतु प्राकारगोपुरान् प्रादहान् शरण्यायके प्रजानां ज्वलितो मुखे Kechit, some of the demons. Khanitre, with digging instruments. Bibidu, broke to pieces. Setu, bridges. Prakara, protective walls. Gopuran, city gates. Ajivyan, the source of livelihood. Chichidu, cut down. Vrikshan, trees. Kechid, some. Parashupanayah, taking axes in hand. Pradahan, burn down. Sharanani, the dwellings. Eke, other demons. Prajanam, of the citizens. Jwalita, blazing. Ulmuke, with firebrands. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Some of the demons took digging instruments and broke down the bridges, the protective walls and the gates, gopuras of the cities. Some took axes and began cutting the important trees that produced mango, jackfruit, and other sources of food. Some of the demons took firebrands and set fire to the residential quarters of the citizens. Purport. The cutting of trees is generally prohibited. In particular, trees that produce nice fruit for the maintenance of human society should not be cut. In different countries, there are different types of fruit trees. In India, the mango and jackfruit trees are prominent, and in other places, there are mango trees, jackfruit trees, coconut trees, and berry trees. Any tree that produces nice fruit for the maintenance of the people should not be cut at all. This is a Shastric injunction. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutaye Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavedhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we are seeing that this 7th canto has started, which is very dear to the devotees. The entire Bhagavatam is dear to devotees, but the 7th canto has the pastime of Narasimha Dev and Prahlad Maharaj. So it's especially dear to devotees because we get a glimpse into the life of a pure devotee of the Lord. And Prahlad Maharaj is often quoted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, read his pastimes many times, and he's often quoted by Srila Prabhupada because of the teachings that he gave to not only his demon friends but also to his demoniac father. So it has just started. We are only on the 2nd chapter of the 7th canto, and it has the whole pastime has started unfolding in the 1st chapter. And this is a conversation that is actually happening between Yudhishthir Maharaj and Narad Muni. So the Rajasuya sacrifice was just getting over, and Yudhishthir Maharaj saw the wonderful scene where Krishna actually beheaded Shishupal. All of us have heard that pastime. Shishupal committed his 100th, he said 100 time bad words against Krishna, and Krishna had given his mother a promise that the moment he says for the 100th time some bad words, I will tolerate for 99 times, but after that I will actually have to kill him. So then Krishna releases his Sudarshan Chakra, but he cuts his head off in such a way that not even a drop of blood spills in the sacrifice. And this was to maintain the sanctity of the sacrifice. And the more, interesting or intriguing part of that pastime was not that the blood didn't spill, because the Lord is capable of doing such activities, but the more interesting fact for all the devotees and everybody who was present there was that Shishupal, his soul merged into the body of the Lord. It went into the sky momentarily, and then it went and merged into the body. So Yudhishthir Maharaj especially was very astonished when he saw this happening, because he had himself seen how the two brothers Shishupal and Dantavakra were very demoniac towards the Lord. They were very inimical towards the Lord, and they were always talking bad about the Lord. So he knew how much they hated the Lord. He knew that they were absolutely not having any devotional inclination. But even then, he saw Shishupal getting Sayujya Mukti. And this is something that really astonished him about the Lord. So he actually asked Narad Muni. There were many sages and many other Pandavas, and everybody was present. And he asked Narad Muni about this fact. He says, how is it that, such a great demon, such a great revolter of the devotional service, and somebody who was so much an enemy to you, how is the Lord so merciful to him that he gave him Sayujya Mukti? And then Narad Muni starts explaining everything about the Lord. And actually that chapter is entitled, The Supreme Lord is Equal to All Living Entities. So we see that Narad Muni explains to Yudhishthir Maharaj in that particular chapter that how, the famous verse is also there, how, the gopis are always absorbed in thoughts of the Lord through their lust, how Kamsa was always absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord through his enmity. So he said that sometimes absorption in the Lord is more of a person who has inimical feelings toward the Lord rather than someone who has devotion. Now, again, speaking of myself, we are all devotees, but how much are we, especially me, absorbed in thoughts of the Lord? But you see Kamsa, we see Shishupal, they were always absorbed in thoughts of the Lord. Especially Narad Muni quotes Kamsa, that he was always so absorbed in thoughts of the Lord that he would see Krishna everywhere. Dinabandhu Prabhu was mentioning in one of his classes that even if his, his servant was bringing a nice shining glass of water with a water jug, and it was reflecting light, and Kamsa suddenly said, oh, Krishna's coming, guards, kill him. Or even when his wives, they used to dress up nicely and come, and their jewels would twinkle and all in the sunlight, he would think, oh, Krishna has come all dressed up to kill me. So you see, every time he was absorbed in Krishna. But even then, the Lord has given them Sayujya Mukti. He has actually allowed them to merge into his existence. And this is what astonished Yudhishthir Maharaj. And Narad Muni stresses the fact that actually the Supreme Lord is equal to everybody. He does not discriminate between demons and devotees. It is just that the devotees are very inclined towards him. They always want the Lord in their lives. They do not want anything else. And therefore we might feel that the Lord is more favorable. But he is actually equally disposed to both the demoniac and the demons. And we see that Hiranyakashipu is actually acknowledging that fact in this particular chapter. In verses 7 and 8, Hiranyakashipu is telling all the demons, because Hiranyaksha has got killed and Hiranyakashipu is extremely upset that his brother has been killed by Vishnu. But he feels that this is all chabi, we say in Hindi, chabi mara. He feels that this is all being instigated by the demigods. Because obviously he had all the demons hate the demigods. That is how they are demons and the demigods are demigods, because they don't get along. So he feels that he had a lot of enmity towards the demigods, but he didn't have any enmity towards Vishnu, especially. But he feels that because of instigation of the demigods, Vishnu has gone and killed his brother Hiranyaksha, who was a very great person, according to Hiranyakashipu. And how can he kill my dear brother and all that? So he was extremely upset and angry with the Lord. So he calls all his demon associates and he's giving them instructions. But before he starts giving them instructions what to do, he's indirectly praising the Lord. So in verses 7 and 8, he's actually saying, he says the Supreme Personality of Godhead has given up his natural tendency of equality towards demons and demigods. Even in the previous verse, in verse 6 also he acknowledges that yes, the Lord is equal to everybody, but just because these demigods have instigated him, they have worshipped him a lot, that this time Vishnu has sided with the demigods, and on their behest, he has gone and killed my brother, who was innocent, according to Hiranyakashipu. So we see even Hiranyakashipu is acknowledging that fact, but now because of his anger, he is blaming the Lord that, oh Lord, you have given up this equality that you had between the demons and the demigods, and now you have started siding with the demigods. And it is interesting that in the verse 9, further in this chapter, in verse 9, Hiranyakashipu speaks of a great philosophical point. So we were hearing Nitai Sevani Mataji and previous speakers speak about this fact, that if you take the word Hiranyakashipu out of all the conversations that are happening and the verses that we hear, we would actually think we are reading the Bhagavad Gita. Because he speaks such he speaks the philosophy so eloquently, so beautifully. He is narrating actually the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. So we see here also in verse 9, he actually tells, he says that, especially this is a struggle that we have when we preach, like when we do Bhakti Vriksha programs, especially to Indian audiences who come steeped with the background of demigod worship. If we see in India, many people worship demigods for different boons. People are worshippers of Ganpati, people are worshippers of Lord Shiva, people are worshippers of Saraswati, people are worshippers of Kartikeya or Murugan, like that, or Ayyappan. So like that, so many different demigods are worshipped by Indians. And it is very difficult to preach to them that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like when you please the Lord and you worship him, everybody is satisfied, including the demigods. You don't need to separately worship anybody. Just focus, one-pointed focus on the Supreme Personality of Godhead is enough. It's so hard to preach to them. But Hiranyakashipu is actually espousing that philosophy in this particular chapter. He's saying that Vishnu is supreme, Lord Vishnu is supreme, and if we cut off Vishnu, he is the root of the tree, then the demigods who are the branches and the twigs will automatically dry up. That is what Hiranyakashipu is saying in verse 9. So it is so much in line with a verse which we see in Canto 4 of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Yatha taror mula nischanena. Tripyanti yat skanda bhujo pashakha. Pranopahara cha yathendriyanam. Tathaiva surharam achyutejya. So that is the verse which is there in Bhagavatam, which says that when one worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is like watering the roots of the tree. So when we want to nourish a tree, we don't go and put water on the leaf. We don't go and separately put water on the flower, on the fruit, on the trunk, on the different branches. We don't do that. We always water the root of the tree, and we know the nourishment is going to go to all these different parts of the tree. So that famous verse in Canto 4 is actually describing how one need not worship anybody separately, and just by worshipping the Supreme Lord, you have included all worship. And the same philosophy Hiranyakashipu is saying. So he was such a great scholar. He knew the Vedic injunctions, he knew the Shastras. He's saying that as soon as you stop like, I kill Vishnu, we would have cut off the root of the tree, automatically all these demigods will dry up. Automatically the different parts of the tree will, wither, and that tree will be uprooted and it will be gone. So after, espousing such great philosophy, but because of blinded by the anger of, his brother getting killed, he's completely not following the philosophy that he himself is preaching. He is giving instructions to his demon followers that go and create havoc in the human society. So he tells them that go and, kill the Varnashram Dharma, get rid of the Varnashram Dharma, start killing the Brahmins, stop the sacrifices that are happening. Because once, those two parts of Vedic culture are gone, there will be no one who will then instruct the Kshatriyas. So that way we will see Kshatriyas will stop, giving charity. They will stop actually sponsoring all these yagyas, and we will slowly see the whole fabric of human society dry up. So Hiranyakashipu attacks the Varnashram Dharma. He is asking them to attack different important aspects of human civilization. And we see the demons have now started implementing the instructions of Hiranyakashipu. So in today's verse, we see that they have taken up digging instruments and they are actually destroying bridges, gopurams, the gates of the city. They are destroying residential houses by putting fire, like lighting up, and their houses are burning in blazing fires, and they are also cutting down important trees. Now when I was reading all this, I felt that this is so similar to terrorist activities. Like nowadays what we see terrorism in the world, we see this is exactly what terrorists do. They actually attack the core of human existence. They actually try to attack places which will have the highest impact on civilization. And we saw such examples not in the very recent past. We saw examples of the 9/11 attack in America. They attacked the core, the hub of the American society. America was proud of its Twin Towers and they brought them down. They also attacked in Mumbai, like few years ago, there was attack on the Taj, which is also like a great prestigious emblem of Mumbai. They attacked the Bombay Stock Exchange. In Delhi, we've seen so many attacks happening in very important government places. So we see terrorists also do the same thing. They try to attack the whole fabric of human civilization, which will bring the whole human civilization crumbling down to its knees. And that's what we see has happened when these terrorists attack, and that's what we are seeing these demons doing. And we will see in the next verse that because of all these things that the demoniac people are doing, the demigods actually, the sacrifices will stop, the demigods will stop getting their shares. Because demigods actually thrive. Their nourishment is through all these sacrifices that are done by human beings and the offerings or oblations that are offered in the fire. The demigods get nourishment actually out of that. I'm sure in Kali Yuga, the demigods don't expect that, because in Kali Yuga, nobody does proper sacrifices. They must be having other sources of nourishment. But in the previous ages, their nourishment was all these oblations, which were given in the fire in their name. And these are gone now. So the demigods actually start roaming here and there, and then we will see the whole pastime unfolding of how then Prahlad Maharaj will be born. The demigods attack Kayadu. We'll see the whole pastime unfolding in the future. But we see in today's verse that the demons are actually breaking down important things, and they are cutting down all the trees and all that. Now, Srila Prabhupada in the purport, like in the translation, it's talking about bridges, gopurams, setting fire to residential quarters and all that. But Prabhupada in the purport is talking just about the trees that the demons are cutting down. So Srila Prabhupada had so much compassion for the trees, especially for trees which are, he had compassion for all trees, but especially for trees which are fruits, flowers and vegetables bearing. He says those trees especially should not be cut down. And the last line of the purport, he says this is Shastric injunction, that these trees should never be cut down. In fact, during one of the morning walks in 1973 in Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada was speaking to his disciple Swarup Damodar. And that time Swarup Damodar asked Srila Prabhupada, he says that just as there are different grades in different species of life, like we see Krishna describing in the Bhagavad Gita, there are so many species of trees, so many species of humans as well, different species in aquatics, different species in animals, and every species has a certain type of evolvement or evolution. So he's asking, Swarup Damodar is asking Srila Prabhupada. He says that in trees also there are different grades, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, yes, The trees that bear very nice flowers with nice fragrance, trees that give like lot of things for utilization of the human society, like for example, the sap of the tree is used for something, or trees that bear very nice fruits and flowers, these trees are actually pious trees. And therefore, they should be, extra care should be given to these trees. So what to speak of ordinary trees? We should definitely not cut down these pious trees, because obviously, Jivo Jivasya Jivanam, we know Narad Muni explains in the Bhagavatam that one living entity survives on another living entity. And for human beings, the least karma that we can get is by surviving on fruits and vegetables. And obviously, we don't get karma when we offer them to the Lord. So for devotees, it is very important that we are taking from the trees, but then we offer whatever we are taking from the trees to the Lord. So flowers we offer to the Lord, fruits we offer to the Lord, and then only take them as prasadam. So that way the trees are getting benefit and we are not getting the sin of, taking some of the trees or cutting down. Like spinach and all, we actually uproot it. So it's not that we are just taking a fruit. So we don't get the sin of actually cutting down of all these living entities. So Prabhupada says these are pious trees and we have to be extra careful when we are dealing with these pious trees. So we see that Prabhupada was, he had great compassion. We know he was almost like he was Mahavadanyaya. He had great compassion. He came for the deliverance. In fact, in Melbourne only once when he was going in the car and he saw so many people. It was, I think, a busy Monday morning or something like that. And many people were waiting at a traffic light to cross. And that time Prabhupada had tears in his eyes when he saw all these people waiting at the traffic light to cross and to go into their offices. Prabhupada says that Krishna is waiting with open arms to welcome all his children back to the spiritual world where they don't have to work so hard, where they don't have to work like donkeys in this material world, suffering, having material miseries. They don't have to go through all this. But still people are not ready to turn to him when he saw all these people who were going to go for a long day of work at offices. So much compassion for human beings, but he also had so much compassion for all creatures. In fact, there are many nice examples in the Lilamrita we see. Like once when Prabhupada was in Bhaktivedanta Manor in London, and obviously the manor has beautiful grounds, beautiful gardens. So Prabhupada, the devotees actually, they were going for a walk somewhere, or they were going to the car or something. And the devotees just walked across the grass and went ahead. But Prabhupada actually took a whole roundabout turn. So he only walked on the pathways that were created. He was very careful not to even walk on the grass unnecessarily when there were pathways available. Obviously, if there's nothing else available, we do have to walk on the grass. But when there is some another alternate route available, Prabhupada actually took that route, because he did not want to unnecessarily trample on grass and unnecessarily cause pain or cause harm to that living entity. So much compassion even for grass, and even for an ant. So once Prabhupada, I think there was some rasgulla or some sweet kept on his table. And Prabhupada saw that there were some ants over there, and he actually rang the bell and called his servant. And Prabhupada said that, see, if you leave sweets lying unattended like this, ants are going to come and many of them will then die. Like falling in the rasgulla syrup or something like that, they will die. So please always ensure that you are covering the sweets properly and keeping. And whenever you are, like, that man said, okay, I'll get rid of the ants. He said, yeah, do it very carefully, otherwise the ants will die. So much compassion even for ants who were there on his table, when he saw them on his table. In fact, once there were some devotees in one of the temples, and they were complaining to Srila Prabhupada. They said that, Prabhupada, in the kitchen we are seeing there are lots of rats which have come, so can we please kill them? Do we have your permission? And Prabhupada said, yes, you can kill, but you should kill yourselves, not the rats. Because you did not maintain cleanliness, that is why these rats have come. And we should never kill any living entity. So why do you want to kill these rats? You keep the kitchen very clean. Ensure that there is no food crumbs lying around here and there. Ensure every night everything is spick and span. And you will see that these rats will not be there anymore. They will go somewhere else where they find a source of food. So you should be killed, but do not kill these rats. So Prabhupada was so much against killing of living entities. In fact, he said that even trees experience the pain. Again, in a morning walk, one of the disciples was asking, and Prabhupada said, yes, trees can also hear, trees can also see, and they can also experience pain. And we see that great example in the 2 trees, which Narad Muni delivered of, Manigriva and Nalakuvera, who were cursed to stand as trees. They were seeing everything. They were witnessing the pastimes. They were hearing the pastimes of the Lord. So Prabhupada said, yes, trees experience pain, and therefore we have to be so careful that we are not unnecessarily harming all these trees. In fact, in Shikshashtakam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually tells us, the famous 3rd verse of Shikshashtakam, Trinadapi Sunichena Taroriva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talks about the quality of tolerance, which is so important for devotees, the quality of tolerance, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu takes the example of trees. He says one should be as humble as a blade of grass, and one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. And only in that state of mind one can chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra continuously. So what an elevated position Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving to these trees. Because the trees are always tolerating, any types of weather, they are tolerating, but yet they are always serving mankind. They are giving shade, they are giving fruits, they are giving flowers, they are giving necessary saps, they are giving necessary woods to even burn. So like that, they are always serving mankind, and therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave them that position of comparing. When you want tolerance, be more tolerant than a tree. So in several occasions, we see when, there were temples being built, Srila Prabhupada showed this great compassion towards trees. Now, there is a famous example of the Juhu temple. Most of us have read about the whole struggle which Srila Prabhupada had to go through to build the Juhu temple. Not only there was a struggle to acquire the land, that whole pastime, and Giriraj Maharaj has now written a beautiful book, I'll Build You a Temple, where he describes the whole Juhu struggle. But not only there was a struggle to get the land in the first place, then there was struggle to actually get permissions for building. And once they overcame that struggle of getting permissions to build, then there was the actual struggle of constructing the temple. So, and then installing the deity. So many struggles all the Juhu devotees and Prabhupada had to go through to get Radha Ras Bihari installed on the altar and start their worship. So, and there was, whenever even devotees would apply for permission, in India it is called the municipality in Mumbai, like we have the council here. So they had to apply to the council for permission, and the council would sometimes give permission, but they would put lots of conditions when they would give permission. So in one such situation, when they had applied for some permission to build inside the temple, the council actually put a condition that in the Juhu land, you should have a road, an internal access road, which should be of a certain width according to the length of the road. So this is a condition they had put. Now devotees saw that exactly where they had to build that road of that certain width, there were some palm trees over there. Because Juhu temple is very close to the beach, so there were palm trees over there. And devotees didn't know what to do because they had to build that particular road. So Srila Prabhupada had seen the Juhu land, obviously, when it had been bought. And then after a few months, he again visited the temple. And that time, Srila Prabhupada, the first concern, he said, he was very concerned because he saw that 1 or 2 of the palm trees had been cut down. So he immediately called the devotees and he said that, why have we cut down these trees? It is against the Shastras. We should not harm any living entity, and you all have cut down such fully grown big trees. And immediately the devotees thought, oh, we have a ready-made answer. Prabhupada, it's for the service of Krishna. So they thought they will, use that trump card and say, Prabhupada, it was because, this condition had been laid down by the council, and we were building it's for building the temple, because we need an internal access road. And Srila Prabhupada said, no. You have to put your foot down, you have to go back to the council, and you have to tell them that it is against our religion to cut down trees, so we cannot cut trees over here. So obviously the devotees went back to the council, but the council officers were arguing with the devotees. They were not giving them permission to move the road somewhere else or something like that and not cut down the trees. Then again, Srila Prabhupada had gone on an international tour, and after a few months he again came back to Juhu. And the first thing which he did, he called the devotees and he said, look at his concern for the trees. He said that I was in Tehran for some time, and over there I saw that, they keep actually trees in the middle of the road. So they're in Melbourne, we see that a lot. There are trees in the middle of the road and the road is on the side. You have almost a nature strip in the middle as well. So he said, I saw in Tehran there are trees in the middle of the road and the road is taken around the trees, but they do not cut down those trees. So the same thing you have to do over here. You go and again fight back with the council, put your foot down and say, we are not going to cut the tree. So now the devotees had, they were feeling more empowered. They had these things to quote that, oh, see, in Tehran also such things are done. So they went back to the council and they said, we are not going to cut the tree. It is against our religion. So please give us permission to build around it. And ultimately, after a little bit of a struggle, the council officers complied. And they gave the permission. And even today, if we go to the Juhu temple, we can see those trees which Prabhupada saved, those palm trees. They are still standing there with asphalt around them. So the devotees actually just built like a little sort of a sitting place around the tree, and they built the road around that. So this was the compassion Srila Prabhupada had for trees. And we can see that in today's verse, that compassion coming out of Prabhupada's heart. In fact, in London, Prabhupada had stayed with the Beatles. Like the devotees had just bought George Harrison had just donated the manor land. Like this was before that, when the devotees had done Shyam Sundar Prabhu, Gurudas Prabhu. Prabhupada had sent all of them to London. So before all, they had bought the temple and they had started building the temple. Srila Prabhupada used to stay with in the Beatles' house for some months. And that time when Prabhupada stayed there, it was their last day, because I think that Prabhupada's quarters were ready in the temple. So Prabhupada was going to stay in his quarters. And devotees were looking for Prabhupada. He came down with them to go into the car, and suddenly he had disappeared. So the devotees looked here and there for Prabhupada, and they actually saw Prabhupada in the garden. And Prabhupada was touching all the trees. He was going around the garden, he was touching all the trees, and he was thanking the trees. Because Prabhupada used to go there around the gardens for morning walk, and Prabhupada wanted to go and express his gratitude to the trees. So he was going and thanking all the trees, and he was telling the devotees that because we have taken service from them, we have to express our gratitude. They gave us nice shade, they are beautifying this garden, they gave us nice breeze. So, and they were giving good fragrance, good flowers and all that. So obviously I have to express my thanks. So this was, the finer details which Prabhupada used to take care of when he was alive on this planet. So compassionate towards trees, and so much having the quality of gratitude to everybody, even to trees. Prabhupada had that quality. So we see that, speaking of trees and Prabhupada and his association and care for trees, in fact, our whole movement started with the tree. Now, we had Dinabandhu Prabhu here a few days ago, and he was actually trying to solicit donations for Prabhupada's, to build Prabhupada Memorial where Prabhupada was born. And they showed us a video, and in that video we see that Prabhupada was actually born under a jackfruit tree. And same jackfruit tree is mentioned in today's purport, that mango trees, jackfruit trees, all these good fruit-bearing trees should never be cut. So our whole movement started with Prabhupada's birth under a jackfruit tree, which they are now trying to get some more land, because Prabhupada gave instructions that please build a memorial where my birthplace is there. So they are trying to get some more land, and Dinabandhu Prabhu and the other Prabhu who was traveling with him, they were actually seeking donations so that they can build that memorial for Prabhupada. So our whole movement started there with Prabhupada's birth under a jackfruit tree. And even when Prabhupada went to the United States, even in New York, it is said that our movement actually started under that tree in Tompkins Square Park. So Prabhupada had established a storefront on 26 2nd Avenue, but it was said in the Lilamrita also it is mentioned that Prabhupada led the first Harinam. There they all went in a procession, and for 2 hours, Prabhupada sat under it was an elm tree in Tompkins Square Park. Prabhupada sat under that tree and Prabhupada did kirtan for 2 hours continuously. And that's when Allen Ginsberg and so many other devotees, Kirtanananda Swami, everybody joined. They all became devotees just during that kirtan of Srila Prabhupada, which Prabhupada did for 2 hours. It is described also, Prabhupada's emotions are described, that he was actually so very, in Hindi we say hatash. He had almost become very despondent because he wanted the movement to kick off, but there were so many struggles coming. Nobody was coming forward to take up the Krishna consciousness movement. And Prabhupada actually was internally praying that Krishna, you send people, because I have come with your message. The poem which he wrote when he was on the Jaladuta. You make me dance as you want me to dance. I have come to spread your message, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I have come to preach about the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna. So you please send people. And almost internally, Prabhupada was deciding to go back, that it's not working in the US. So for 2 hours, Prabhupada intensely chanted. If we see some of those videos also of Prabhupada chanting under the Tompkins Square Park and even the photos, we can see that great intensity and devotion and that prayerful mood Prabhupada had when he was chanting under the elm tree in Tompkins Square Park. And it's mentioned that when Prabhupada opened his eyes, after chanting for quite some time, he saw a huge crowd of people around him and everybody was chanting and dancing along with him. And that is what gave confidence to Prabhupada that yes, all these people are interested in the Hare Krishna movement and the movement will flourish. He saw that as a sign. So it is said that our movement actually started under that tree in the US, in the Western countries. In fact, on 18th November 2001, on Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day, they actually commemorated Srila Prabhupada and they honored Srila Prabhupada by putting a plaque in the Tompkins Square Park, like, even on the tree and even in the park itself, they have put a huge plaque where they have actually honored. They have recognized that this is where the Hare Krishna movement took its roots. This is where it flourished from. And the Swamiji did kirtan over here. They did, chanting of the Lord's holy names under this tree. And the whole Hare Krishna Mahamantra is there on that plaque. So imagine millions of people who go to that park, to see the park or to take their morning walk. And everybody is reading that Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So that is how the movement is still flourishing by people, reading that Mahamantra and people still getting inspired by that story of Srila Prabhupada starting the movement under that particular tree. In fact, Govinda Dasi, when I was preparing for the class, I was seeing Govinda Dasi writes, who's one of the disciples, female disciples of Srila Prabhupada. She had written that whenever Prabhupada was in Hawaii, he used to love to there was a huge plumeria tree in their garden, in the temple. And wherever Prabhupada would see a tree, he would love to go and sit under that tree. So his morning massage, Prabhupada would always take under the tree. He would sit under that plumeria tree and the devotees would come and give him massage with the mustard oil and camphor. So that was Prabhupada's morning routine even in Hawaii, even if we see in Los Angeles. Prabhupada used to love to sit in the garden under trees, among trees, and there, the devotees would read Krishna book continuously. So we see Prabhupada's association with the trees, and we see that Prabhupada was very attached. Even when he was in the botanical gardens here in the morning walk, Srila Prabhupada was, talking. I was reading about this morning walk with the devotees, and Prabhupada was actually feeling very bad. Because Melbourne, like Australia, generally has quite a lot of trees, which is a good thing. There's lots of greenery, lots of trees. But Prabhupada was seeing it from Shastra Chakshu, from a spiritual perspective. And he was saying that because so many living entities performs, some activities, karmic activities in such a way that they have to become trees and they have to suffer for such a long time. Because once a human being goes into a tree species, it is not that they get one tree birth and their tree species lifetime is over. They have to go through all the tree species which are there. There are so many types of tree species which are there, and some of the trees live for thousands of years. Even today in America, and there are many trees around the world, like one tree's lifespan is thousands of years. So imagine once you finish that lifespan, then you go into another tree species. So you're just stuck in that cycle of being amongst the trees only. So Prabhupada, with great compassion, he was speaking. He was telling the devotees in the botanical garden, he was saying that people who like to expose a lot, who wear, skimpy clothes, they want to expose their body, they want to show off their bodies, they generally take birth as trees in their next lifetime. And, the greatest example, which we already mentioned, is Narad Muni cursing Manigriva and Nalakubera. They also were like that. Even though a great sage was passing by, they had no sense that there's a great sage coming, and they were still naked. The ladies who were there quickly covered their bodies with saris and all that because they felt little embarrassed and there was some shame they had in them. But Nalakubera and Manigriva had absolutely become shameless because of drinking and because of wealth of their father. So they actually did not care when Narad Muni came, and Narad Muni said, okay, you're like to expose like this, you all will become trees now. For thousands of years, and they became the Yamala Arjuna trees. But obviously every curse of a sage comes with a blessing. So they had the power to see Krishna's pastimes, and they were blessed by Krishna. Krishna delivered those two trees just to keep up Narad Muni's words. So Prabhupada continuously had this compassion. He was saying that is why go and chant, we should chant loudly, we should do Harinam loudly so that the trees also get the benefit. All living entities get benefit, but the trees also hear the Mahamantra and they get delivered from that wretched birth that they have been put into. So we see we have so much to learn from trees. We have so much to learn from this purport which Srila Prabhupada has written. that, it is a Shastric injunction not to cut down trees, any tree at all, but especially all these trees which are serving humankind so nicely, like giving fruits, giving flowers, giving fragrance, their sap is useful for something, giving lots of vegetables. So such trees should definitely not be cut down because they are more pious. They are pious living entities who have taken birth like that. So we as devotees, we take great care. When we, learning from Srila Prabhupada's own example, we take great care. Obviously, we will not go with an axe and cut down trees, unless obviously we need it for some wood or something like that for lighting fires. But otherwise, generally, we will not cut down trees. But in our own day-to-day lives, we take that care by maybe using toilet paper less, for example, because that comes from trees, or using tissue paper less, using paper plates less, not wasting papers in, writing some faltu things or, some wasteful things. We use our notebook. Everything we use, wooden spoons, everything we use so carefully because we know this has come from trees, and the more frugal we are in their consumption, the more, saving of trees that we will do. And whatever we do, because jivo jivasya jivanam, we have to survive on trees. We have to survive on fruits, vegetables and all that. So we do have to consume, we do have to take from the trees, but whatever we take from the trees, we actually offer to the Lord so that the benefit goes to the tree. Because when we are offering to the Lord, actually the tree is getting delivered. Because it has become, whatever the tree offered has now become prasadam. It has been offered to the Lord has actually taken that particular thing which was offered to them. So as devotees, this is something which we all can actively do. Following in Srila Prabhupada's footsteps, what Prabhupada is saying over here. We do not want to follow in these demoniac people's footsteps who are cutting down trees unnecessarily to print volumes and volumes of books, unnecessary books. Prabhupada says that so many books are being printed. In fact, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was also very much against that. He said that trees should be cut down and paper should be taken, made from trees only to produce Krishna conscious literature. Any other literature which is printed is useless waste, and we are actually incurring karma if we do that to the trees. So as devotees, we are extremely cautious about that fact, that we do not harm the trees unnecessarily, and whatever we are taking, we are utilizing, whether it's books or whether it's consumption of fruits, vegetables or whatever, we are utilizing it in Krishna's service. So that's the gist of today's class. We will end the class here and we'll see if there are any questions, comments or corrections.
A little bit of a technical question. You mentioned a pious tree. You mentioned a pious tree. And how does a tree become pious? Like, with the evolution of consciousness, can an impious person become an impious tree? And then through being a tree for so long, how does the tree develop that piety?
So it is mentioned in the Shastras that, the accumulation of karma is only in the human species of life. So only as a human being you accrue karma based on your activities, and then obviously you get reactions for the karma. But in all other species of life, you are just exhausting your karmas. Yeah, we are not accruing any karma because no other species of life has that intelligence to be able to decipher or discriminate between right and wrong or anything like that. And therefore, in all other species of life, you're just exhausting the karma which you got, because of which you got that particular species. So even in the, if we fall down to the aquatic species, then slowly you're exhausting the karma. You are, evolving into a four-legged animal, and then you evolve probably into a cow, which is like the highest species you can get as an animal, and then the next birth you can get as a human being. So like that, there is an evolution, and therefore in terms of trees also, Prabhupada said there are different gradations of trees. So there are some which are very unevolved trees, which do not experience so much of things, but then there are these evolved trees like who are actually giving lots of fruits, flowers and all that, and those have now become pious, and then slowly they are progressing. So in terms of gradation and evolution of the trees, that is what Srila Prabhupada meant.
Awesome, thank you.
Sorry?
Thank you.
In fact, we see Lord Krishna also praises trees in the 10th canto when to his friends. In the 22nd chapter, he is praising the trees. He is telling his friends, look at these trees. They are such, he's saying that, look at these greatly fortunate trees whose lives are completely dedicated for the benefit of others. Even while tolerating heat, sun, cold, wind, etc., they are keeping on serving humankind. So even Krishna has so much compassion and so much appreciation for the trees. We see him praising the trees of Vrindavan to his friends. in the 10th canto of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So, yeah.
Nice.
Any other questions?
I'll probably say like the trees themselves, they are like, so their consciousness is developed so much that they have a goodness consciousness. So will they go into a more pious animal's body in the next life? Or could they, because for example, they could be like more seen like impious animals. So from a tree, a good tree, a pious tree, could you turn into a pious animal? Or could you go from being a pious giving soul to all of a sudden being impious, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so the laws of karma are very difficult to understand that way, Prabhuji. So it's very difficult to tell, okay, after this birth somebody will take this birth and after this birth somebody will take that, because they're very subtle and very complicated and a bit difficult to understand, because everybody does some good and bad, especially human beings. Everybody does some good and bad in their lives. So what particular birth they will get based on their good or their bad, like it's very difficult to understand the laws of karma. Only the Lord is in control of the laws of karma. But definitely when we are actually as devotees, we take the responsibility to then, like I was mentioning, to offer the fruit to the Lord. And when the Lord is actually consuming that particular fruit, we are using it in His service. Let's say it was used for His Abhishek or something like that. The juice was used for the Abhishek. Then definitely that tree is getting benefit. Or when we do loud Harinam and the trees are hearing the Hare Krishna mantra. So that way they are definitely getting benefit and they are definitely going to evolve and get a birth where they will be able to continue this Harina Bhakti or the devotional seed that has been sowed for them.
Okay, so is it set that the tree has to go from one tree to another, to another, to another, to another? Or if, for example, the tree is used in the Abhishek, could it skip species?
I'm thinking yes, Prabhuji.
I know, I can imagine.
Gopavrinde, show anything you want to add?
Definitely, tree will get benefit if we use the fruits of the tree in service of the Lord. So they are definitely accruing sukruti.
They'll exhaust their karma quickly and come to human species quicker than other trees.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for the nice class. You were telling how Hiranyakashipu earlier in the verses indirectly was glorifying the Lord, and later then in his anger he started blaspheming the Lord. My question is, the Lord liberates the demons, but he doesn't purify them. I mean, like he doesn't give his bhakti to them like he gives it to the devotees. And he, like to his devotees, doesn't give it to the demons. So how can we understand? Why doesn't he give his bhakti to the demons?
So the Lord is, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Ye yathamam prapadyante. So the Lord reciprocates with us as we reciprocate with the Lord, always. So because the demons do not want bhakti of the Lord, they do not want anything to do with the Lord, and therefore a devotee wants although. So the Lord is very merciful. He is a very loving Father. So just as a father, you cannot force love out of anybody. Can your father force you to love him? He can't. He can beat you and no, you have to love me, you have to love me. That cannot be done with a living entity. So in the same way, the Lord also never forces, and that is why He has given us what is called as free will. So the free will, everything is predestined, everything is according to our karma, but the free will is the only thing which we can use to either surrender to the Lord or not surrender to the Lord. That is where our free will comes into play. So devotees choose to surrender to the Lord. Devotees choose to live a life of Krishna consciousness, of bhakti, of trying to, rise in their consciousness so that one day they can go back to Godhead. Whereas demons don't want that in their life. And therefore, like I said, Ye yathamam prapadyante, the Lord always reciprocates according to our level of surrender and whether we want to surrender and whether we want the Lord. But people who don't want to surrender and whose faith is somewhere else, then He actually allows that faith to be fanned. In the Bhagavad Gita, we see in the middle section, in the Bhakti Yoga section, the Lord is saying that people who have faith in the demigods, I actually fan that faith so that their faith in the demigods becomes strong. Only thing is, those people don't realize that I am only giving powers to the demigods to actually fulfill their wishes. But the Lord actually fans whatever you have in your heart, the Lord will fan and facilitate that. Like we know how the Lord is there. It's like two birds sitting on a tree, no? So the Lord is the witness, and the soul is us. One of the birds is us, who is actually eating the fruits of the karma. So the Lord is just, observing and sanctioning, sanctioning. That is the role of the Lord. He does not interfere. Hey bird, you should not eat that, you should not eat this. But as soon as the bird turns towards the Lord and accepts the Paramatma as the Chaitya Guru, then the Lord starts guiding him towards an external guru, towards his bhakti and all that. But the demons don't, their face is completely turned away from the Paramatma. They don't want anything to do with the Lord. So with Hiranyakashipu, Shishupal, their example, they were actually Jai Vijay. We know that their origin was Jai Vijay, and therefore the Lord gave them the Sayujya Mukti, and then obviously they had to go back to their original position of being the gatekeepers of the Lord. But with other demoniac mentality people, since they don't want anything to do with the Lord does not interfere in their free will. He allows them to continue like that. So that is why we see he does not give bhakti. Bhakti is something which is very rarely awarded by the Lord. He gives opulence, he gives whatever you want, but bhakti is something that he gives only to people who actually don't want anything else but just Krishna bhakti. Then he awards bhakti to the other living entities. But otherwise, it's very difficult to get bhakti from the Lord.
Like sometimes we having all the knowledge, we also sometimes in anger blaspheme the Lord. So are we devotees or are we demons?
So it's always mixed. We are, every living entity, especially in the material world, we are governed by the three modes of material nature. At all the time we think, kartahamiti manyate, we think we are doing everything, when actually things are carried out by the three modes of material nature. So even in devotion, I think it's in the 3rd canto where Kapila Muni is actually explaining to his mother Devahuti that even bhakti can be in the mode of ignorance, mode of passion and mode of goodness. What to speak of other activities? They are definitely always in the mode of passion, ignorance and goodness. So even in bhakti we can do that. We might sometimes go under the mode of passion, like we see sometimes we are running late and then we are doing fast services. Obviously that, the mode of passion has started coming into our devotional service. Or we are envious of someone. We see, someone's making better garlands or someone's doing something better than me, and we start getting envious. So obviously that quality in bhakti is governed by the mode of passion and ignorance. So like that, we will sometimes see we might fall into the, trap to the mode of, because we are in this material world, we are under the influence of Maya. So we might get sometimes subjected to material modes of passion and ignorance, and that time we might not speak very good about the Lord, or we might not speak very good about the devotees, but the underlying principle is that we are still on the path of devotion. Sometimes we might deviate a little bit because of mode of passion or ignorance, but at least we are on the right path. Our face is turned towards the Lord and we are going towards the Lord. So the Lord definitely considers that devotion. He does not think that, these are demons and I don't want to spare them at all. Demons are ones who are going away from the Lord and their back is turned towards the Lord.
Thank you, Mataji.
Anything else? Okay, we'll end the class here. Granthraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.